What's up, everybody? My name's Big Cam and welcome back to another Comically Boston breakdown episode. And today we are talking about episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Ironheart. They dropped the first 3 episodes last week. There's a breakdown of those episodes out now on the channel. Go check that out if you haven't already. And now the final 3 episodes. Episode 4 titled Bad Magic. Episode 5 titled Karma's a Glitch, and episode 6 titled The Past is the Past. Ooh, and that big finale is crazy. And there was that creepy haunted poster with like half of the iron suit hanging behind Riri, and every dream has a cost, and oh boy, does that cost come prevalent in the final episode of this season. But then there's also this new poster out where she's kind of got like her hands up in the mask of the iron suit, like she's got like a crown getting put on, and that sparked some ideas in me, so we'll talk about that in a little bit later. But very cool post nonetheless. But we were also talking about how it got review bombed last week, and now it has come around, and this was the scores yesterday before the final 3 episodes came out, and the critic score was sitting at 85% with 75 critics reviews and 56% audience score with over 2,500 reviews. So that all that says to me is that, you know, it balanced itself back out. It was at like 70-70 last week, and now it's back down to like 56, which means about half the audience is actually liking it, and then half of the audience is those haters that are just review bombing the show anyways. But you know, my roommate's one of the most hateful people I know, and he is really vibing with the show and enjoying it. So, you know, it can't be that bad. You know, like if anybody is going to hate something, it's him. So, you know, if he doesn't, that's how I know people are being just absurd and obnoxious for no reason. But we got the poster here for Bad Magic episode 4, and I like the way that they were doing that, and I like the way that they had the intro cards, and the first couple episodes was Ironheart and the cracks in the pavement, the Ironheart street sign, the Ironheart money logo, and then they continue that trend with these next 3 episodes, and we jump right into episode 4, and coming off of Riri not saving John, so like, you know, she didn't save him, and by not saving him she killed him, so like, is that her fault? Kinda, not really, but still, she's not feeling okay. And then we still have this dark, mysterious figure showing Parker what happened to John, and that Riri was responsible, and we find out that Joe is actually Ezekiel STANE. So that's where we are after the first 3 episodes, and this mystery ensuing, and she also lost that little biomesh tech in the last episode. So what kind of problems is that going to bring for poor Joe this episode? But we'll see all the repercussions from the first 3 episodes and how it ties into this 4th, and then going forward from there. But oh boy, what a crazy couple episodes. So let's jump right on into episode 4 titled Bad Magic, and we open on Parker holding a gun, and John is trying to convince him to do his first job and robbing this fancy mansion, and we find out what this fancy mansion actually is a little bit later. But Parker gets inside, jumps the fence, and he gets to the safe, and he's opening this safe when a security guard comes in and has a flashlight on him, and he's like, you know, freeze, and he points a gun at him, you know, and he's about to shoot the security guard, but he himself kind of freezes in the moment, and Parker is about to get killed when John has his back and shoots the guy for him. And, you know, doesn't kill him, but definitely shoots him and, like, you know, knocks him out so that they can get out of there. And John's like, we gotta split up. And he's like, how will I find you? And John says to him, I'm never too far away. I'm always with you. And this is what Parker is remembering at his funeral, that is just a small little funeral for him and his crew. And it's like, oh man. So his cousin, best friend, John, whatever his relationship was to John, he's very upset now that John's gone. But also this hood is really bringing the darkness out of Parker. And at John's funeral, Parker's got this really dark look in his eye, and he says to Riri, oh, I got plans for you. And then he hangs a picture of John on the wall in the little restaurant, and then the Ironheart title card is in one of the picture frames, and it cracks as like Parker turns around and walks away, like really letting that hood darkness take over him. And Riri knows that Parker was acting real weird, so she tries to study up on the hood and try to figure out how it works. When her mom walks in, and Riri and Natalie both act mad suspicious, and they do not play it cool at all. And she's like, "You guys alright?" And they're like, no. And she's like, "Well, we gotta talk about that dead, co-worker of yours." And she's like, "How do you know about that?" And she goes, "The cops came to the door and told you about it." And she's like, "Oh, you mean Rampage, not John that got killed last night." So like, Riri's really like not playing it cool at all. And her mom is like, clearly knows something's up. And she's like, "Dude, what is with this kid? She's acting real weird." So like, Parker's acting weird because he knows it was Riri. Riri's acting weird because she doesn't want to like, confess to her mom that she screwed up big time, and she's trying to figure out a way to get herself out of it. And Natalie suggests that Riri should call Shuri and ask for help, and Riri like plays out how that would go, and she's like, "Did you hang up? Oh man, the Princess of Wakanda hates me now." So she's definitely not going to do that. And Riri goes to Joe's, but we see that Joe has been arrested, and there's like police tape all around Joe's house. And we then cut to Zeke being processed into jail, and we find out that Alden Ehrenreich is 5'10", which made me laugh because I was like, "Oh, I thought he was taller." But also like he's standing next to Riri, so that's probably why I thought he was taller. But if he's 5'10" and he's making Riri look short, how small is Dominique Thorne? She's got to be like 5 foot nothing on the dot. Like, so funny. I love how small and petite she is, but such a badass. And then we see that Ezekiel Stane's arrest and the robbery at Heirloom is all over the news, and the tech found and the arrest that led to Zeke getting arrested. And Clown is the only one that's like, "Hey, how did Stane's tech end up on our crime scene?" And they're all like, "We don't care. I mean, it's just someone else taking the blame for us. Why does it matter?" And so Clown may be on to Riri, but the rest of the team just kind of like, whatever. And they're all kind of then like, "The Hood's acting real weird." And then we cut over to see the Hood is doing an ice bath and kind of can hear all of them, we think, or at least like, he's meditating, but he's also doing like an ice bath, and he's meditating, doing a breath hold under the water in the ice bath. And there's like a little timer next to him on his phone, and we see that he did an 11.5-minute breath hold, which is insane in general for this character. But I wonder what Anthony Ramos's breath hold actually is. Is it that impressive? Would be insane if it was. I mean, like the Avatar Way of Water people, they got their times up to like 3-4 minutes, which is pretty nuts. And like, I believe Tom Cruise had it to like 5 minutes or 6 minutes or something like that for the Mission Impossibles. So like, breath hold's not easy, but 11.5 minutes, that just goes to show that like the Parker's hood powers being involved around the holding his breath to turn invisible type of thing. He can hold his breath for a good long time to sneak in and out of places if he so pleases. But Riri goes to see Zeke in jail, and he's pissed at her, and he says that he should have never trusted her and that she will do anything to save herself, even if that means hurting others. And he says that meaning like himself, but he doesn't know that she also did just save herself, and John died because of it, right? Like, so clearly something that Riri's dwelling on herself, but Zeke didn't know that, but now it hurts her even harder because she actually liked Zeke and Joe, and she was like, "Oh, Joe is a good guy. I didn't mean for him to get hurt," but of course her actions had some repercussions, and now Zeke's in jail. We then see Riri goes back to the clubhouse, and Parker asks her if she knows Zeke. Like, "Yo, is this a friend of yours?" And she's like, "No." And he's like, "Oh, I thought all you tech people knew each other." And he goes, "I just thought, if you needed help, you could have came to me and asked for help." He goes, "But, don't worry about it. We got a new tech support specialist coming in, so they can pick up your slack." And then he goes, "Have a good day, Riri." And so she's been replaced, but like, who's her replacement? We then see Riri is setting up security cameras at her house and giving her mom and Xavier a watch that like could track them or some shit, maybe protect them. We haven't seen what they do yet, which we will in a little bit. But Natalie says, "Let me see her brother," and Riri's like, he's gonna be pissed when he finds out, like, that you hid Natalie from him. But Riri's also like, "I don't know how he's gonna react. You saw how I reacted at first. It wasn't very good," and like, hopefully, I think Natalie's hoping that the reaction to Xavier seeing her will maybe be more like Riri's mom seeing her, like, wow, this is amazing, you captured her whole personality, her whole soul, you know, like. But unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be the case. We'll see that eventually. But so Riri goes to give Xavier the little watch to protect him, and she asks him if she's a good person. He says, "You're complex," and he compares her to Spock, and he says some Star Trek quote that apparently was meaningful, and then he goes like, "Live long and prosper," you know, like, so where he initially made the Star Wars joke a couple episodes ago and that rubbed her the wrong way and I thought it was a red flag, he quickly pivots and goes, nah, she was right, you know, like, it be your own people, and me and her used to be really into Star Trek. So he compares her to Spock and being courageous and interesting and, you know, complex, you know, and she is very complex, but still Star Wars. And then she comes back from dropping off the watch to Xavier, and Natalie asks her, "Oh my god, did you guys kiss? How did it go?" And she's like, "You can't die without your first kiss, like, come on." So maybe we as an audience should be shipping Xavier and Riri, but, you know, also Natalie seems to be here for that, and with it being her brother and best friend and all, we're like, you know, if I wanted to date my sister's best friend, I'm sure she would not be here for that at all. Where Natalie seems to be up for it, you know, so that's kind of cool, you know, and maybe Riri will be having her first kiss with Xavier at some point. Although we don't see that in the show, which I thought they might be alluding to it, but maybe they steered away from it and they were like, we'll get in her relationships maybe in the future. But Riri really needs some sleep, so she tries to get some sleep, but she can't, and then she ends up, you know, feeling the only way she could feel protected and get some sleep is if she sleeps in the iron suit. And then she hears a scream and springs into action when she hears her mom down the hall scream. And she comes in, and it was just her watch heard the TV have a gunshot, and it, like, protected herself. So, like, you know, she's like now in this little ball. She goes, this little watch airbagged into her protective shield, like, and like her mom's just sitting there like, get me out of this. Like, why are you sleeping in a metal suit? So then mom and Riri have a heart-to-heart and a talk, and she's like, yo, listen, what is going on? And they get talking about Riri needs some help fighting this magic, and her mom's like, I may know some magic people. So she goes to bring her to an aura bath, and they go to her friends, the Stantons, who we met her mom a little bit at the beginning of the season. But now we get to see the mom and the daughter is Zelma Stanton, and she, the daughter, Zelma, can sense the square piece of the hood in Riri's pocket and brings them to a parallel realm. And all of a sudden, like, just brings her down. I was like, holy shit, we're getting full-on magic in this bitch? And this girl knows it? We know, who is this girl? And Zelma tells us that the cloak was created in a different dimension and that it's very old, and that Zelma studies at Carmitage and even name drops Doctor Strange. Y'all ever heard of Doctor Strange? You know, like, and you're like, what the hell? Who is this girl? And how does she know Carmitage and Doctor Strange? And then she says, like, her mom says, like, that most of her magic studying, she tried to go to Carmitage and so did her mom, but her mom dropped out. And she says most of her magic studying comes from reading old books back in Chicago, and they think that this magic that they found is dark and comes from a very dark place, and such a dark place that they won't even say it, and it scares them so bad that they kick them out and they call it bad magic and tells her to destroy it. And that's where the title of the episode comes in, Bad Magic. So whatever's behind this hood is dark, bad magic, which is no bueno. And then her mom loses it at Riri, like, how dare you not tell me what you're into, and you bring in that dangerous piece of material into my friend's shop, like, what the hell? And, you know, her mom's like worried about her, but also like, you know, blowing up at her, and just doesn't want Riri to end up dead or in jail. And Riri, like, tells her off, like, you know, just because I'm not what you want me to be, like, and, you know, every time you throw it in my face that, like, talk about my dead dad and friend, like, no, I don't want to do that. So Riri, like, gets into her suit and just takes off away from her mom. And I was like, oh my god, poor Riri's, like, just can't catch a break, you know, like, just everything's going wrong with poor Riri. We then cut away from Riri and we go over to the Hood, and he goes to Zeke in jail and offers him a job. And I thought it was funny, but also a great line, like Zeke saying, my life is over. Like, I'm not gonna be able to go back to Joe. Like, my life is over. And Parker just goes to him, how exciting. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, you get to be a new person in a new life. He goes, what, be a fugitive? And he's like, yeah, maybe, because you're definitely going to be breaking out of prison and then be working as a criminal. But, like, it's better than just being locked up for the rest of your life, you know, and being this Joe McGillicuddy loser with a job you didn't even like and neighbors you don't like and people that treat you like shit. Like, now he can be a new person. And how exciting is that? Riri then tries to go destroy the little piece of the suit at Zeke's bunker. And she tries to break in, but she can't figure out the code. And then Natalie just goes, why don't you check under the mat? She looks down, there's a live, laugh, love mat at the front door. She picks it up and there's a spare key running underneath the mat to get into his bunker. And she's like, come on, man, a spare key to get into your secret bunker? Come on, man. And then she tries to destroy the little piece of the hood with acid and all types of different things. And it's set to The Healer by Erykah Badu over this scene, and we get like a funny Uber moment which stops the song, and I just thought that was so funny. Like, she's like building, working, nothing's working, she's getting frustrated, she orders food, she goes out, grabs the food from the guy, and like she grabs the food, and the guy's like, what's going on? Why are you in the middle of nowhere? What is out here? And then she's just like, get back in your car and leave, bro, you gave me your food, why are you looking around? Like, piss off, you know. And I thought that part was just really funny. I couldn't find the clip of it though. I was like, man, it's the little things like that I wish I could like screen capture the entire episode, because there's things that I noticed that I love that like some people just never talk about, you know, and you never see the clip of, and I'm like, I would have clipped that, but I don't know how. So like, if there's any editors out there, help a brother out. But so after everything Riri's trying to destroy, it seems like nothing's working. And Natalie then says, what if the suit's indestructible? And Riri's just like, I can't do this. I gotta get out of here. And Riri's like having a panic attack and like is flying away, but her heart's beating too fast. So Natalie's like, oh my God, I'm gonna find a place to put you down. And Natalie like drops her out of the suit to get some fresh air and then takes off to go get someone to help. And I was like, who's she going to help? Or who's she going to get? Like, what? And then we cut to Zeke escaping out of jail with the crew. And he like, you know, tiptoes his way out of there and gets out of there. And we see Riri's old crew, the Hood's crew, helping him escape and get out of there with all his tech and things that they confiscated. So I was like, oh man, wow. So Zeke's got a new crew. We then see the person that Natalie went to go get is her brother Xavier. But I was like, oh no, how's she gonna like get Zay and like tell him that like she's Natalie? But she ends up just flying up to his window, and like he opens up the window and he's like, Riri Williams outside my window, and she just kind of opens up the suit and just goes, get in me, you know. And he's like, no. And then we cut back to her arriving with Xavier, pushes him out of the suit, and he's like, never do that shit again. But then Xavier realizes that Riri's like not doing well, and he like walks over and hugs her and kind of holds her up, and she kind of like almost collapses in his arms. And he's like, how'd you bring me here? When Natalie says, I brought you here, and he sees Natalie, and he does not have the same reaction Riri or her mom did, and he kind of freaks out. And yeah, he was not very happy when he saw Natalie. He goes, you made my sister into a likeness? He tried to like touch her and like goes through her because she's just a hologram. And like he goes, nah, this ain't cool, man. You can't bring back alive my dead sister, and one, not tell me about it, two, make like use her likeness. Like, you don't have the right to do that. And he's right, but he's also like, you know, shut down this AI. And he doesn't understand that like she's so much more than an AI. But like this was a heartbreaking scene. I was like, oh no, like Riri's now gonna choose to lose her best friend all over again, or lose the guy that she likes, but also her friend, but also like Natalie's brother, you know, like one of the closest people to her. She's like, I don't know what to do. We then cut back over to Zeke, and he's getting a buzz cut, and Slug helps him with some of his upgrades, drilling into his brain and all types of stuff, adding some enhancements to his body like he wanted to, but he's getting some help from Slug and the crew here. And yeah, so he shaves his head and they start drilling into his brain, but they don't show it. Right before they go to like drill, they like cut behind like this piece of metal, and we just hear him like, ah! But they wouldn't show the drills going into the head. I was like, wow, no balls. X-Men's Origins of Wolverine at least showed like in like his eyes going, you know, like they at least showed it a little bit. No blood, but they showed it. We then see Parker gives the crew their next job and he says, Riri killed John. I want her head. And then we cut to the credits on episode 4 and the song track over the credits is Villano by Anthony Ramos. So Parker Robbins the Hood, Anthony Ramos, I didn't even realize did music, which should sound dumb because I didn't realize he was in Hamilton, which obviously is like a Broadway musical type of thing. So yeah, of course he could sing. And he did a song Villano for the credits. And I was like, oh, it kind of fit. I was like, oh man, kind of dark. I wonder if he like was filming Red Hood and like was like, yeah, I got an idea for a song. I could do this, I could vibe. But so shit has hit the fan in every way in that episode. And Riri's all alone, no suit, no Natalie, no mom, no Xavier, no crew. No suit because Natalie took off in the suit, so she's just all alone, man. And that's where we start off episode 5. And this poster, although it doesn't say the title for it, it implies what goes on in this episode. And the poster is we get a little bit of Riri versus Zeke this episode, and I was like, oh man, that's awesome. But we jump into episode 5, titled Karma's a Glitch, and we open on Natalie sitting on the edge of a rooftop watching the old homemade footage that we saw at the very beginning of the first episode of Riri and Natalie talking. And, you know, so she's just trying to remember what it was like to be alive, you know, and like, the AI thinks she's really Natalie, right? Like, she can't comprehend that she's an AI, but she's like, feels real, you know, but she isn't. So like she's trying to like, you know, there's a lot of complex feelings going on, you know. But then out of nowhere we see a magnet grabs Natalie in the suit and pulls her into the back of a truck or a van, and we see that it was Slug and she has taken the suit. And we then cut over to Zelma and Riri at a White Castle, and Zelma is filling in Riri on Doctor Strange in Dormammu. And she's got like a little drawing of Dormammu, the Cosmic Conqueror. And I wonder, this honestly looks more like Surtur to me, like the smaller version of Surtur before Ragnarok. But like, I don't know, maybe this is what Dormammu's look might look like at some point in the future, rather than that giant space head that we saw in Doctor Strange. And she reminds us of Dormammu and Caecilius back from Doctor Strange 1. And she says that magic sometimes comes with a price, and that price sometimes is a heavy one. The Blood Sieves then show up at White Castle to beat Riri's goddamn ass and kill her, actually. But Riri, like, is still acting tough and sitting there like she's the shit. And she, like, clicks her little necklace thing, thinking that the suit's on its way, but Natalie's been captured by Slug, so she's kind of on her own right here. And Riri tries to run for it, but she is scrappy and she's using anything and everything to help defend herself. She's grabbing, you know, the fire extinguisher, the fry basket, you know, the spatulas, that anything in this White Castle she could get to use as a weapon to help her, in, you know, in any way possible, she's using against the Blood Sieves, which is like just funny to me that I'm like, oh god, Jerry and Roz, these old clowns. And then, you know, she kind of traps the Blood Sieves in one of those watches, like they go to shoot her, because she's like, just shoot me, end it quick, and she goes to pull the trigger, and then that, because the gunshot goes off, the watch, you know, triggers a protective barrier and traps them in this little ball, and she kind of pushes them like they're stuck in a hamster ball, and I thought that was hilarious. But then she goes to run for it, and she's still got to deal with Clown, and there's a glass door. Clown's like, you think this glass door is going to stop me? Obviously, Clown's the explosions, you know, person, the pyrotechnics person, so she can get through a glass door pretty easily. She can get through a lot of things pretty easy. She just explodes it, you know. We cut over to see Natalie in the back of the van using like a saw, trying to cut off the little magnet thing that stuck to her. But Riri is dealing with Clown, and Clown, you know, she like uses this device and she's like, boom, and like blasts her back with like the percussion of this thing. And then, you know, the Clown had a grenade she was about to throw, and Clown almost blows herself up in the process. But Riri's then able to run for it, and she gets out into the street and she starts running, but Slug sees Riri running down the street, and she's in like this moving truck van, and she's like hauling ass. She's gonna run her down the street, and Riri's just like running away from this truck, and we get this amazing shot of the suit. Natalie gets out of the back of the truck, comes and picks up Riri. She does this little flip, punches the truck flips over. We get a slow shot of Slug's face like, ah, flip it over, and Riri just flips her off as she does it. But I have a clip of this, and I was like, oh my god, this just couldn't be better. What a great shot. But we saw the truck flipping in the trailer, and I was like, you know, waiting for this part, and I knew it was coming because I saw it in the trailer, and I thought it couldn't get better, and it somehow did. She comes down, she hits the truck, and then as it's flipping over, you see Slug just like, ah, and she's just like slowly, fuck you, Slug, man, try to hit me, run me down with this van, steal my suit. Fuck y'all, you know, like, but now that they've handled Clown, the Blood Sibs, and Slug, Riri and Nat kind of have a little argument, and they get into it, have a fight, and then Nat goes, you know what, I'm done, and shuts off to go to sleep for the evening, and she shuts off, and then Riri goes to fly away, and some electricity starts to zap her, and she comes crashing down into the White Castle sign, and it says, ouch, in the lettering on the sign. I just thought that was a funny little detail, but Zeke Stane then shows up to get his licks in on Riri, and I was like, oh no, but he's also, you know, got these upgrades now that Slug helped him with, and he's, you know, like, he's got electricity powers. I thought he was going to look a little bit more Iron-esque, you know, he looks more like just a man, and like just got these like metal in him where like you can't really see it as much. I thought we were gonna maybe see him looking like he had like these permanent gauntlets on or something like that, like the comics almost, but either way, I don't love how they did his character, but he was fine. He's funny. I enjoyed him regardless. And there was one shot in this fight that I really enjoyed. But, you know, so now she's got to go head-to-head with Zeke Stane, and because Parker helped him get upgraded, he's got to take out Riri for Parker. And he ends up, you know, beating her down, and really, like, she has no powers against this electricity power. You know, she's outmatched right now against his upgrades, and you know, he starts to like shut down her suit and like rip it apart and beat him up, and all of a sudden we see this shot of like her suit powers off and the HUD on the inside powers off, and we see Zeke's eyes like through her eye holes, and it looked terrifying. I was like, oh my god. And like you see just a little bit on like his temple, he's got like this metal thing there, like as when they drilled in to add like bionetics enhancements to like his brain or something, his cells. But Zeke, because he still has feelings and likes Riri, he says, you know, get out of here, get out of Chicago, because if Parker finds out you're alive, he won't be so forgiving. And then he takes off, and we see that Clown saw that Riri is still alive, and Riri like ripped out the Natalie portion of the Natalie from the suit and left the suit sitting there as cops we hear like in the background coming to the scene of the crime, but Clown saw her running away, so Clown knows she's alive and knows that, you know, didn't necessarily do his job, but also, you know, Riri had said to Clown like, yo, ask Parker if he killed Rampage or Stewart, you know, like I bet, like, you know, he's probably been lying to you. And she's like, I wonder if he has been lying to me. So, you know, Clown's got to come back and check that information out later, you know what I mean? Riri then goes home to her mom, and her mom's all mad at her, like, you're just gonna fly off in that suit and then just walk back in here like nothing happened? And then she goes, Mom, I need help. And her mom like runs over and hugs her and like grabs her face and like goes, okay, let me see you. Are you okay? You look okay? And then just kind of squeeze her for a hug again. And this like made me tear up, because I was like, this poor mom, like, is worried about her child and just wants to be here for her and help her, and like, you know, just wanted her to ask her for help. But she, you know, Riri her whole life always went to her stepdad Gary, right? Like never felt like she could go to her mother. And so now finally she goes back to her mom, and you know, her mom's talking to her about her problems, and her mom tells her that the suit is the reason for her problems, you know, why she got kicked out of school, you know, her obsession with this suit. It's also the reason why she ain't got no mans. I was like, oh damn, mom throwing some shade. But Riri wanted to build this suit so that she can protect herself and her mother. And her mom's like, it's my job to protect you, not the other way around. She's like, Mom, this is way bigger than you or me right now. Like, this suit is the only way to protect us. And her mom says, like, you know, when people, you know, something happens, there's either fight, flight, or freeze, right? You've frozen and you've ran, but you haven't tried fight, right? So you flight and you froze, but you need to try fight. And she's like, how am I supposed to fight? And her mom brings her to Gary's garage, and Riri thinks of this place as all the things that she lost and what this place has taken from her, taking Riri's, you know, stepdad and Natalie. And her mom's trying to show her the things that this place gave them and the memories they have and all the things that she built in this garage with her dad, you know. And Natalie starts to project the flashback of Riri and her dad dancing to Brown Skinned Girl by Leon Bridges. And I was like, ooh, what a song. But he's like, you know, dancing and being charming. And I'll tell you what, Gary's got a mean little two-step, a little friggin', oh, I was like, Gary with the two-step, that's what I'm talking about. And then, you know, he kind of spins around little young Riri, and she kind of falls and bumps into like the little stand behind her, and a wrench falls and hit her head. And he goes, ooh, you're all right. And he goes, move your hand, let me check. And little Riri says, this is why I don't do breaks. You know, so even little Riri's smart as hell. And she's like, nah, you just gotta power through, no breaks. But Gary says, there you go, old Ironhead. Which, you know, we never really got like where Ironheart comes from, but like it was definitely Gary, is the inspiration for it, you know, where the building comes in, where the Iron Man loves comes in, where the suit armor type of thing comes in, and he called her old Ironhead when the wrench bumped her head. I was like, But like, you know, Riri apologizes to Natalie and her mom because, you know, she does realize that, you know, this was a great memory, and like Gary kissing her on the cheek, and like, you know, it was a beautiful memory to see, like in such a dark moment of this show. And like, you know, well timed. Like not only was it well timed, like for the audience needed to see it, Riri, her mom, and Natalie needed to see it as well. Riri, you know, as she's apologizing to Natalie, goes, you're a glitch, but you're my glitch. And that's the title of the episode, Karma's a Glitch, I guess. Karma's a bitch. But Riri is then going to embrace her Chicago-ness and her Chicago roots being home. And she's going to fight for Chicago. And she's got nothing to build the suit out of when her mom brings the Barracuda that her and Gary built, that she had sold. But her mom, when she found out that Riri was coming back and going to be staying, she bought the car back. So now the suit will be built out of the parts from the Barracuda that her father and her used to make, you know, like, and they put that car together. And then Riri goes, Dad told me when he gave me this car that it would always keep me safe through thick or thin, you know. So she's gonna use the parts to build her like last suit and like her magic suit. Very cool. Like this is gonna be her what, 5th suit that we've seen. We've seen the Wakanda Forever homemade suit at MIT. Then we've seen the red Wakandan Forever suit. Then in this series, we've seen the white MIT suit. We've seen the Chicago V1 build that she was going around in. And then now we're going to see this red Barracuda magic suit, which is very cool. But we see then cutting over to the crew and back to Parker and Zeke goes back to Parker and says, Riri's dead. And Riri is then stressing out over the building of the suit and that she can't compete with the hood in Zeke's new upgrades. So she's got to fight magic with magic, and that's where Zelma comes in. We then cut back over to the crew, and Clown presses Parker about killing Stuart, and the hoods got him twisted, and Parker gets all mad and fires the crew, and like all that talk about family, he just lets them all go and tells them to leave, that he doesn't need them, he's just gonna go it alone now. And you know, the Hood's darkness is really, you know, taking over him and stretching into his face at this point, when we see Zay show up and help Riri build the suit. And this building of the suit process is set to a Desperate Youth remix, and it was really good. But you see Zay tearing apart the car, Riri's testing the tech behind the garage, Zelma's doing some weird magic shit, Mom's there too, Natalie, and even Landon, the kid with the wagon, is there. So I was like, oh, this little like new crew that Riri's got. Like, she had the clown and the blood sibs and Slug and Parker and John, but she didn't feel like she felt out of place in that group. The group felt fine, but like Riri felt like a fish out of water there, you know what I mean? Where this crew feels like her family, you know, like her little, for lack of better words, like her mystery gang, like the Scooby-Doo gang, you know what I mean? Like, that's what it felt like. You got the young, you got the old, you got the everywhere in between, everybody's got their roles, you know, like it felt good to see Riri building this suit with her family. But of course it felt good because with the finale coming up next, things are about to get dark and twisted. But we see Zeke return back to his house to get his belongings, and he tries to use his powers on Heather across the street when she's talking shit. But it doesn't work for some reason, and Parker then pulls up, and he is actually in control of the tech in his body in exchange for bringing him and breaking him out of jail. And Parker brings him to the mansion and makes him break into it. And this is the same mansion that we saw John and Parker from the flashback in the last episode. And he tries to make the guy that is the owner of this mansion sign just like the other CEOs. And we find out that this guy in this mansion that he was breaking into is actually Parker's father. And he put him out of the house when he was 12 years old. So that's how, you know, he found his way to John and doing crimes, and that this is his father, and his father didn't want him, and that it's nothing personal. And this is like something that Parker said all the time, like, hey, it's nothing personal, it's just business. And it's like, oh, so he really is just like his dad, which pisses him off even more. And Parker pulls out a gun and puts it to his father's head and says, sign it in ink or sign it in blood. And we hear like his voice get almost distorted, like the darkness is like taking over his voice and his whole body. And his father signs and he says, stay and I'll kill you. If you go to the cops, I'll hunt you down. And now, get the hell out of my house. And his father like just gets up and leaves. I was like, ooh. So the Hood's darkness really starts to seep into his face as he's sitting there, and he just like stretches into his whole face. I was like, oh my God, Parker is fully gone at this point. And as the darkness seeps into his face, his eyes kind of go black like a demon's taking him over. And Riri tries on her new suit for the first time. And Zelma goes to power up the suit with magic. And Natalie starts to glitch. Uh-oh, karma's a glitch. And then, you know, she starts to glitch out. And we hear her, like, Gary come through Natalie and say, girls, run! And I was like, oh no, what a terrible, like, glitch there. And then Natalie's glitching out, and the hard drive in the suit can only hold Natalie or magic. But like, what is in this magic that's like taking over the hardware space and like, you know, pushing Natalie out? I was like, oh my God, what kind of magic is Zelma working with here? Then Riri pops out of the suit and she's trying to get Natalie backed up onto a laptop, but we hear Natalie say, I love you, Riri, and she fades out, and Riri's like, Natalie? And it cuts to black, and that's the credits on episode 5. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. So Natalie may be dead twice, once for real, once as an AI, and maybe we find out where the Hood actually is from and who's behind it in this next episode. Like, wild stuff. But I guess let's jump right on into episode 6, titled The Past is the Past. And this is a crazy poster here with Riri sitting at this table and just a little hand stirring coffee. But whose hand does that belong to? We'll find out momentarily. So this episode 6 opens on the flashback from episode 4 again, in John and Parker trying to rob the safe at his now father's house that we learned. And they split it up and Parker ran for it, but he gets trapped in a dark tunnel when the Hood in a mysterious man appears behind him and says he could open the door. And he goes, "What door?" And a door appears that says Desperitos on it. And we see Sacha Baron Cohen, and he's making a deal with Parker. I was like, oh my god, this is what we're doing, the finale? We're really getting it, and we're really getting into it. And we see Sacha Baron Cohen, bearded, long hair. He's in like this business suit that looks really like expensive and stylish, and he's sitting across from Parker. So we now see Sacha Baron Cohen's character, and we don't necessarily know his name yet. We'll find out by the end of this episode. But this has to be the devil Mephisto, right? And that's what we're all guessing, but we'll get a confirmation later this episode. But he's making a deal with Parker, and he asks him, "What do you desire?" And he says, "I want to be rich." And he goes, "How rich?" And he goes, "Stupid, disgusting, filthy rich." And he says to him he's going to give him the tools to get what he desires, and he wants to be a king. And he goes, "So be it. But what do you want in return?" And he just says, "Something you won't even miss." And he goes, "Well, whatever it is, I'm in." And he shakes his hand. He goes, "I knew you were smart." And then he goes to get up, and they're shaking hands over like the half-eaten pizza at the shitty restaurant. And he goes to leave, and he's like, "Yo, you forgot your hood." And he goes, No, this is yours." And he goes, "Are you sure? It looks really expensive." And he goes, "Oh, anything for you, your majesty," and like puts the cloak in the hood around Parker. So this is where Parker got the hood. Although we don't know the true origins of the hood. Where did Mephisto get it? And what is it really made out of? And why is it so dark? And whose was it before Parker and before Mephisto's? You know what I mean? And I thought it was so funny. Parker's like looking in the mirror at himself in the hood, and like, you know, Mephisto's standing next to him, and he's like, "How do I look?" And he goes, "Right now, you look like shit. But soon, you'll look like the king you were born to be." And then we get like this side-by-side comparison shot of like, yo, how it started with him wearing the hood. And he's like this young, like, naive kid. And now the kingly hood that he is now, covered in tattoos. He's got this business suit, this dark scowl. He's got this darkness of like these scars creeping into his face. I was like, oh my god, Anthony Ramos looks terrifying now as the hood. And as we cut over to the King Hood now, sitting there looking like the king he was born to be, he's sitting at his father's dining room table, and a big old feast is set when we see only him sitting there eating, but he's actually sitting there eating with Zeke, and he's like forcing Zeke to eat the food. But we get this episode's title card for Ironheart in the food on the table, and then last episode's Ironheart title card was in the White Castle logo on like the fries or something. But I love just those little title cards throughout this series. Like, anybody that's really been hating on this series, I don't understand why. Like, sure, it's not perfect. There are some things like little Zeke things that I would have fixed, and maybe some little story things. But overall, the vibe of this show, the soundtrack has been awesome, the cast has been great, and this final finale episode, they really like stuck the landing with something interesting and weird and different, you know, like, but also left it open now at the end for someone like me. Like, I'm gonna be brainstorming for the next couple weeks where this could go and where we might see Ironheart next, you know. But as he's making Zeke eat the food, he walks over to him and he says, "You know, if some reason you've lied to me and you haven't killed Riri, we gonna have problems." And Zeke's like, "Nope, she's dead." And he like says to him, "Wow, you're a real piece of shit, holding me hostage and playing dress up in your dad's house. You don't belong here, and everyone's gonna know it." And he goes, "You know what? You're right. Let's go." And Parker and Zeke take off, and they leave this mansion. And we cut back over to Riri trying to re-download her brain in Natalie. Even though Zeke warned her that this could melt her brain, she just wants her best friend in this AI that she wanted to delete at first. Now that she's not there, she is desperate to get her friend back. You know, all she wants is Natalie back. But it's not working, and she's impatient. She tries to take off in the suit, and not even really knowing if the magic in the suit is affecting it or how it's affecting it, you know, like this could go very poorly for her. And we then cut back over to Parker, and he's trying to talk to Mephisto and whoever the guy is that gave him this suit. And we then see Sacha Baron Cohen's character appears, and he's got a little bit of a different accent and a little bit of a different look now. He's got, you know, like the unbuttoned dress shirt and like suspenders, and he's talking in a different kind of accent, but also like a darker, ominous tone. And at this point, Anthony Ramos's character, he's a little bit like a lost puppy dog just begging for his next treat type of thing. And it's like, oh man, this is a bad look for him. I liked him more when he was like the leader of the group and like had, you know, a solid head on his shoulders. At this point, he's now lost it, you know what I mean? Like the suit's darkness has taken over him and he's just desperate for more power type of thing. But does he even really have power? He's alone. Power over what? If you're alone, what do you have power over? But Parker, when he appears, says to him, "Where have you been?" And he says, "I have other clients." And I'm immediately like, who? And we then hear him say, "You haven't gotten my messages?" And Parker's like, "You mean these scars and the occasional creepy vision? Yeah, I've gotten your messages." And, you know, this guy seems scary. And the way he says, "I said be careful the way you speak to me," and he gets like right up in his face, and like this serious Sacha may be really good. Like when initially they said Sacha Baron Cohen's Mephisto, I pictured Borat. I pictured very nice and stupid as fuck, you know, like his stupid accents, his goofiness, his, you know, like he's a funny guy, but not really my humor that I like. But I also was like, maybe the devil should be capable of being funny. But if he's also capable of being this serious and this dark, I am very much so here for this casting of Sacha Baron Cohen as Mephisto, or whoever this guy is. And this guy says to Parker, "You wanted to be stupid, disgusting, greasy rich, like a modern day Shakespeare. He was also a twat." And right, so now there's this humor coming in. I'm like, all right, he's serious, but he's also being a little funny. And I'm like, yeah, no, that line was hilarious. But it also, he said it in a dark, serious way. So you're like, ooh, it's funny, but he's not joking. You know, like, be serious still. And then Parker asks for more. And he goes, "More? Why would I give you more after what you have made such a dog's breakfast of everything else?" And he goes, "I got a better idea. Maybe I should just replace you with someone a little bit more appreciative. Yeah, that would be lovely." And Riri shows up in the lobby of this place, and Zeke's guarding the place for Parker, and she's now got to fight Zeke in his electricity powers. And he says, "If you manage to hold on to that hood, I will give you more power. Maybe." And then he disappears. So Parker, you know, is like, "So if I hold on to it, you'll give me more?" And he disappears. And like, so Parker just wants more power. But like, what more could he get from Mephisto at this point? And Mephisto just wants him to hold on to that hood. Don't lose it. You know, like, why? Riri then figures out a way to help Zeke, but the only way to do it is she has to kick him in the nuts to get the tech to shut off in his brain, so that then she can get in and, you know, get Parker's technology out of there so that he can run himself. And she goes, "I'll be careful not to kick you too hard in the sake of the STANE family name." And he goes, "Okay, try it." And he's like, "Yep, that was a good one." And she's like, "We good, Joe?" And he's like, "Joe's gone. I've got millions of dollars worth of weapons inside me and no idea where to put this anger. Go handle Parker, but no, you and I ain't done." So just setting up a maybe future fight between Zeke, STANE, and Riri Williams. So maybe another second season, he's a big bad. Maybe in just the future he shows up again. We do know RDJ is going to be playing Dr. Doom in Doomsday. So like, maybe this show is kind of, you know, Ryan Coogler did tease that like Dr. Doom is technology meets magic. This show is kind of Riri Williams, technology meets magic, but also dark magic with Mephisto. So maybe Mephisto plays some big type of role in Doomsday and going forward. this could also be setting up maybe a Midnight Suns, you know, and who else are these other clients that Mephisto has, and what other type of deals has he made, you know, like, we'll get into that as well. Riri then goes to get the hood off of Parker, and he laughs right in her face. Like, she's like, give me the hood. He's like, ah, you kidding, right? You're funny, you're hilarious. So this is boss fight time, and now we get Riri versus Parker, tech versus magic, and it looks like the hood is making Parker more beastly, more demonish, more vampire. He almost looks like Morbius in this fight scene. I was like, oh my god, what is happening to him? And even she's like, Parker, dude, look what this is doing to you. And like the scars are, they started saying scars, but I always saw it as like these veins like underneath his skin. And like if you ever took it off, like maybe the veins would go away type of thing. But they said scarring, so maybe that will be there forever. Kind of like Wanda when she reads the Darkhold and the fingertips turn black. No returning from that, right? But Parker ends up getting the best of Riri, and he's got her at gunpoint, and it's actually just a really pretty sweet hologram that she has, but we think like, you know, he's got the best of her for a moment, but it's just a fake out. And she takes the hood from him, and she goes to go down the elevator, and Mephisto is eating food in the restaurant, but this time he's more stylized to like whoever his client is, which I thought was a very good touch. You know, he's wearing more of a business suit, and he had the hood because he knew Parker was like his target, you know, person that he's trying to make an agreement with. This time around, he's got like J's on. He's got like this band t-shirt and like this just little blazer on, almost looking like some tech guy from Chicago, you know, like relating to Riri a little bit more. Has the exact same food on the table as he did with Parker, with the pizza on the table, with the slice already taken out of it. He's eating pizza with a fork and a knife like a weirdo, but you know, that is deep dish Chicago style, I guess. You kind of do have to eat it with a fork and a knife. But so this guy's trying to make a deal over the same shitty pizza the same way he did with Parker. And Riri's like, great, another magic asshole, as he like takes her suit. And I was like, he was pretty quick to dismiss that suit that she was wearing. Maybe the magic in it made him kind of fearful, you know? Like, I don't know. Why did he go, you won't need that clunky suit, and he just like took it off of her and made it disappear. And you're like, oh. Why would he do that? Why? But so she's like, great, another magic asshole. And he goes, hey, that's mean. You know, like, and he says, I promise I'll give it back when they catch up. So she sits down to catch up, and he says he loves the exceptional, the terrific, the dogged, the someone inquisitive and curious. And that is why I'm here, to help the unseen and the unheard. And he says he made some deals with some unsavory types too. All 100 of the Forbes top 100 riches, plus 14 kings, 3 popes, and a Beatle. Ringo. Which just means like, oh, that's why Ringo Starr still looks so good and young. He made a deal with the devil. Perfect. But he says he loves his job, and says together they can build something iconic, just like Riri wanted to do all along. She wanted to build an iconic suit. But he seems very convincing, and you know, she starts to like, you know, buy in maybe to what he's saying, and he's relating very well to her wants and needs. And Riri says to him, okay, Mr. Dormammu, and he laughs, and he almost has like a cynical, dark, maniacal laugh, like he's laughing all the way from the depths of hell. And he's like, Dormammu, and he says, he couldn't even clean my glorious asshole. And the way he said glorious, I was like, is Mephisto a variant of Loki? He does have the long hair. Glorious purpose is to be a glorious asshole? Who knows? And then she goes, all right, if you're not Dormammu, who are you? And he says he has many names, some that really offend him. Probably the devil, he doesn't like going by. But he introduces himself as Mephisto. And it kind of like distorts his voice and says like this darker tone. And it's like, ooh, very creepy. But even more creepy, as he's sitting here talking to Riri, he stirs his coffee, and the devil is in the details, because as he stirs his coffee, they linger for a second on a shot where he taps the spoon on the side of the glass, and we see his actual form of the red with the yellow glowing eyes, like the comic book accurate Mephisto. And I was like, oh my god. Not only did they confirm his name is Mephisto, they confirmed that it's Sacha Baron Cohen, they confirmed that he's gonna be red. But everyone's like, you know, if there's anybody mad, like, oh, they didn't show the red version of Mephisto, they're not gonna drop one of the biggest character reveals. It's crazy they dropped his name, but they're not going to show the red form of Mephisto in an Ironheart finale that I'm sure a lot of people won't even watch. They're going to wait for a movie or something for that, and most likely, in my mind, either a Ghost Rider they'll introduce that in, because Mephisto and Mephistopheles and the devil is a big thing in the Ghost Rider movies, especially in the past. You know, we'll talk about that in a second. I just want to close out this episode. But yeah, very crazy that Mephisto confirmed. Like, as soon as I heard this, I tweeted at Eric Voss, and I was like, Eric Voss, you must be levitating right now. Are you okay? You know, like, this guy's got to be loving life that it's finally here and Mephisto is real and confirmed. But what a great shot when he's stirring his coffee. You see like the red actual look of him. And Riri's like, is that supposed to mean something to me? Like is Mephisto supposed to mean something to her? And he says, tell me what I can do for you, Riri. And, you know, he can tell she's down and she's hurting. What can you do for her? And she starts thinking about Natalie. And he says, ah, yes, I see. And then she says, what's the catch? And he says, nothing you wouldn't miss, Riri. Just like he said to Parker. And he says, so what do you say? And then we cut away, not knowing if she's made a deal or not. And they cut away like it's about to go to credits with Didn't I by Durando, and which is a great song. Didn't I? Oh, great musical like instruments in that, great voice. Great song. We see Riri is trying to figure out the magic suit, and she's got long hair out of like the braids, and she didn't make the deal with the devil, it seems, because all of a sudden Natalie walks out and she brought Natalie back from the dead. But you're sitting there like, at what cost, Riri? What? Wow, no. But then they also cut back and you're like, oh wait, it's a fake out. And she says to Mephisto, what I want can't be done. The past is in the past. That's the title. He says, ah, yes, death can be difficult. But it's a double fake out, because we see Natalie, and she definitely is there, and Natalie says, where's Gary? And, you know, so for a second I was like, oh, maybe it's just the AI, she, like, figured out how to bring her back. But then she says, where's Gary? And she's like, Gary? What? She think Gary's still alive? So what is this Natalie thinks going on, right? Like, crazy. And then Riri, like, pushes... like Riri's like talking to her about, you know, oh, I got the AI to work, I've been going through all this magic, and like clearly Riri has been up for many hours just going through this magic shit, trying to see what happened and make it work. And then, you know, she's getting close to Natalie, and Natalie pushes Riri's head away, so she's not a hologram and she's real. And as they're like cutting back and forth, and she goes back to their conversation with Mephisto, and she's like, if I do this, you just want me, right? No one else? And he goes, right. And he goes, you want to do this, Riri. Let's do this. Sign with me. Make my millennia. So clearly, this is the best client signing that Mephisto's gotten in a long time. Even better than Riri or whoever the other clients he has that we don't know of. And as soon as he says this, and we get like Riri's face, and you're like, wait, so didn't she make this deal? And I was like, man, I thought Riri was supposed to be a genius. How is she falling for this devil's bullshit? Like, oh God. I was so frustrated. I was like, she's supposed to be smart. How is she falling for this bullshit? This guy is clearly, you know, not a real guy. You know, he's dark. Don't listen to him. Fuck. But then, you know, as we're like, I can't believe she's falling for this bullshit, we see her get to hug Natalie again, and she's so happy. And then we see some darkness is stretching through her arms as, you know, she cuts to the credits. And you're like, no, oh my God. So like it stretches, the same like dark scarring that was stretching through Parker is now stretching through the forearm on Riri. And like, where's her suit? I don't know if we saw her suit in that last shot when she's hugging Natalie. No, you just see Riri with her puffed out hair, and Natalie is clearly alive. But like, is Natalie going to be all confused? Like, why am I alive right now? Like, I should be dead. But also, you know, maybe this leaves the door open for like the comic book look of Riri Williams with the puffed out hair. And maybe now the AI that she has is going to be Tony Stark somehow. And she's going to make a Tony Stark AI like she does in the comic books. So we'll get the Natalie and the Tony Stark AI versions for this character, which is very cool. But if they just go back to Natalie being her like man in the chair, kind of like Ned Leeds, I'm not mad at that either, you know, because Natalie was phenomenal in this series. So I hope they, you know, do her justice and keep her around. But how crazy, like did she make a deal with Mephisto? And if so, at what cost? Like, that's so crazy. And then they cut to the credits again with Didn't I by Durando. And then there's a post-credit scene. And another banger song starts playing, but then Parker goes to Zelma's shop and he's been looking for some magic. And he goes, but I'm looking for some like real deal magic. And, you know, this place looks like not so real deal. And Zelma's like, oh, this shit is some real deal. Like, come on now. And he says like, yo, I know you don't know me yet, but if you're up to it, how about a little abracadabra? And she's kind of like vibing with dark, mysterious, handsome man, you know, and Anthony Ramos is very handsome and attractive, so maybe she's into him. But like, she was also very not so into Riri's dark magic in that hood. So, you know, wait till Zelma finds out that this is the same guy with that hood. Like, oh boy. Zelma also seems to be into him, so maybe setting up the next time we see Parker and Zelma will maybe be in like a magical situation, maybe a Commodores TV show like Strange Academy, maybe Doctor Strange 3, maybe Doomsday, we see her doing some magic shit with Riri in there. I don't know, man, but I'm definitely into it, so like, you know, that will be the next time we see them. But like, why is Mephisto so eager to get rid of Riri's red magic-infused suit when she, like, comes up? He goes, you don't need that clunky thing, get that out of here. And, like, you know, gets the suit out of there. And there's red magic that infused Riri's suit and pushed out Natalie. So what did that? My only guess now is that maybe Wanda's soul was, like, in that red magic and came into the suit. Or it's just like the magic filled it up and it needed storage space, so she had to kick out something else and the magic was like, I'm staying, anything else is leaving. Will Riri end up actually able to use this magic? Because we only really see her like, you know, power up one time and like, in like this big fight against Parker. And it looked cool, but also like, what's going on? It's kind of crazy. But like, he says he has other clients, and we've seen this now be what, the third or fourth deal we've seen made with Mephisto or the devil make with people. And the first ones would be from the Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider movie, and that first Mephisto was so creepy and the voice was dark and, you know, Johnny, you know, like in the way it like just got dark and creepy and raspy. And like, I actually really do dig the Nicolas Cage first Ghost Rider movie a lot. The second one, Spirit of Vengeance, not so much. But I believe this is Kieran Hines. They got to play this Mephisto for the second movie. So we also got to see a little deal with the devil being made in that second one. But other than the Ghost Rider movies, we now have seen Riri make a deal with the devil and Parker make a deal with this devil. So like, who are his other clients that he's making deals with? And how long has Mephisto been around doing dark shit and taking advantage of people? Like, these are just normal-ish people. And he's just like making deals with them and just taking their souls for life. What's the catch? What's the deal? Something you won't even miss. Your soul. Oh boy, how will Riri get her soul back from the devil? And if so, you know, like also there's a line that Zeke drops in this show where he's like, you only care about yourself and you'll do anything to protect yourself and get others hurt. And if Riri really lets that go to heart, maybe in the future she'll sacrifice herself to maybe save Natalie, and Natalie, you know, will be alive and Riri will die this time type of shit. You know, like, who knows? That's just like my ideas and where my brain goes to when I hear shit like this. I'm like, ooh, is that going to be foreshadowing for this? Is this going to be foreshadowing that? Like, All I know is this definitely is going to be setting up some type of Ghost Rider, right? Like, because if we saw the little tease of the red Mephisto and the spoon, like, that red Mephisto we are gonna have to see at some point, and I'm thinking it's either gonna be Doctor Strange 3 or a Ghost Rider film, solo film, or maybe even a Midnight Suns. You know, we bring Blade, and Black Knight, and Werewolf by Night, and Elsa Bloodstone, and Man-Thing, and Moon Knight, and all these characters that have some type of, you know, the hood, darkness behind them. You know, bring in those characters and make a movie, make something cool. You know, and like, it would be cool to have a movie where, like, say Blade or Black Knight or Riri or whoever is the star of the movie, and then you have all these other, like, B-level heroes or C-level heroes, and there's different tiers to this shit where, like, instead of just having extras, you know, in a coffee shop, you could have, like, some of the lesser known people in the MCU, maybe like a Ned Leeds, maybe a MJ, you know, that type of thing. People that aren't necessarily heroes, but also people we know, characters, you know, in the MCU, like over there, and then have, like, you know, the Hood be a guy that these other heroes are fighting, and then they turn him over, and then they all go up against Mephisto by the end of the movie for the third act. Like, I don't know, that's a very loose, you know, script idea. But, you know, it's some type of concept they could do and where they could go going forward. But I would like you guys to comment below your ideas, your thoughts on the Ironheart 3 episodes. I would love to talk more Ironheart with you guys, and if that's something you'd like to do, you can message me on my other social medias down in the description below. Make sure you go follow those and support my other channels. And if you've made it this far in the video and you'd like to support this YouTube channel, I highly appreciate it. And the best way to do that is liking this video, dropping a comment down below, subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and hitting that bell so you don't miss future videos when they come out and you get the notifications. Thank you guys so much. Once again, my name's Big Cam, and I will see you beautiful people in the next one. Peace!